Welcome to Patrick's Scale Studio. My name's Patrick. I'll be your host. This is video 12 of Trumpeter's 1/200 scale USS Fletcher DD-445. And currently, as you can see, we are looking at a blank piece of wood. And this is, just to show, this is what we were using as our build board for USS Fletcher. This one is just kind of a different one than what we were actually using though. You can see there's no holes drilled through it or anything like that. Go ahead and get that out of the way. And I have gone ahead and gotten a beautiful, I think it's a smoke gray water-based stain put on this, and then I put down some polyurethane. You can see I've got the screws up through there along with the washers. So this will sit nice and flat now because that is countersunk right there to allow for the screw heads. And so from here what we're going to end up doing is taking some of this gold rope, and just like I did with Curtis Wilbur, I'm going to end up wrapping this around the base of these screws about 5 times. And what that'll do is kind of provide a nice softer transition from the brass pedestals that we're going to be using. Alrighty, and just about. And when I am actually doing this, I'm going to end up gluing this down because, as you can see, it doesn't stay put very well. But we're going to get that wrapped around there by about 5 times, and then we'll take one of our shiny brass pedestals and put it down. And again, that should provide just kind of a nice, softer transition between this and the build board. And that's kind of what it's going to look like here on both posts. So what I'm going to go ahead and do next is I'm going to glue this down off camera for both posts, and I will come back and show you what that looks like. Alrighty, so this is what it looks like now with the golden ropes attached to the screws with the little brass pedestals. So our next step here is going to be to take Fletcher and we're going to attach it down. So right back here with Fletcher. Alright, so there's Fletcher right here. We'll line up our screw holes. Alright, with those lined up, go ahead and hold it tight. A small screwdriver here. Sorry if my hand's in the way, but there's not really much to look at right now. It's mainly just about getting this fastened on there mechanically, so I don't have to worry about it going anywhere for any further steps in putting this all together. Alright, so now it's largely attached. We can tighten this up a little bit. Okay, and there we go. That is Fletcher attached to its base. It'll kind of be the finished product here for the hull largely and the base. Go ahead and zoom out a little bit here. Alright, so you can see here. There she is in all her glory so far. Looking fantastic. And this is pretty stable. So anytime I move this, I actually see the base moving a little bit. So I'm very happy with this right here. And you see nothing's flopping around or falling apart or anything like that. So next thing up is we are going to start attaching pieces of the superstructure right there, beginning with up front here. So go get those pieces and I'll be right back. Okay, so here we are zoomed in a bit, and this is going to be the first piece of the superstructure we're going to put on. That right there. And what I've found here is it actually is more helpful to start from behind where these barriers are, because they want to pinch in too much just putting it right here. and then kind of juggling with getting this in its proper space along with, at the same time, well, I guess that might work. But at any rate, I'm going to go ahead and get some extra thin, put into those slots. And you notice I'm not ultra concerned about getting extra thin on the deck where the actual piece of the superstructure is going to go, because that's going to be covered up, of course. And go ahead and put that aside. We'll start back here and drag it forward. And we should just be able to start, yeah, there we go. Alright, so that's in place. Let's have a look. There we go. So that first piece is stuck down on the hole in the deck. The camera here, a little bit better camera these days now, so we should be able to show off some of the detail a little bit better than previously. Well, that's why I'm kind of holding it up here, so. Alrighty, so we'll go ahead and put this back down. And I've got a little bit of a repair right here to do with this little splinter shield here. I will take care of that off camera, but really it's just going to be putting on a little bit of extra thin just to make sure that it's still stuck down. And then, so the next time we'll be back here is putting on this middle piece right here. So let me go ahead and get everything ready and I'll be right back. Alright, no, it's not already stuck down there, just making sure that I'd be able to fit it in place. The tricky part about this particular part, or this hunk of superstructure, is there are things already in place on the deck that you have to manage to get this in place around without knocking them off or getting in the way or anything like that. So it's a pretty intricate process, I guess, or at least it's something you have to really approach carefully. So I'm going to go ahead and put in some extra thin right here. Again, not overly concerned about where it's getting on the deck where this part's going to be. The nice thing about the extra thin is it does a wonderful job of kind of helping to lubricate those locating posts, or locating tabs, I should say. Alright, so go ahead and very carefully get this lowered in place. Alright, now that I'm and you can see it kind of just snaps into place. There we go. Now let's have a look at the other side. Yep, everything is still there. I really like the way that this looks so far. The decks meet up very nicely. The decks on these superstructures meet up very nicely. I'll go ahead and show you sideways what that looks like again. You can kind of see where that middle superstructure piece meets the forward superstructure piece. And the nice thing is, with this part in place, it is a heck of a lot less likely I'm going to knock off these little red valve reels right there, or valve wheels, along with a couple other items here on the deck that would be a little bit fragile or susceptible to damage just by brushing my hand or something across it. So go ahead, and I'm going to get the last piece of superstructure that goes right there, and this one out of all three of them is the trickiest because it has to get perfectly go within these depth charge sabots. It has to fit around these pipes. I think these are like vents. And so it's a little bit trickier to get in than these two. So let me go ahead and get that part and be right back. All right, so go ahead with our extra thin again. I like a little bit more on there than that. What I'm aiming for specifically is to make sure it gets both sides of these slots and kind of help soften the plastic and get it ready. Alright, here comes the tricky part. Now I use, when I practice this right here as kind of a good locating strategy, because this little piece there lines up. Oh, that's making a giant mess back there. And it does not want to go in there. Nope, never mind, now it went. I just didn't get that satisfying click. But it is in place. It meets up with this middle superstructure part right there, that deck part. This little walk. It looks like we're going to have to temporarily clamp this in place. So let me go ahead and get this clamped down, and when it's dry and set up, I'll be right back. Alright, well, here is the back piece in place and not coming up any further or coming up off of the deck. So this it went as planned for the most part. So you can see this little like catwalk area here kind of fits into a notch on the back of this second or midships superstructure piece. I'll show you what it looks like from this side. You can see it's kind of difficult to see it in place there with all the stuff in front of it, but that's just fine. And back here, of course, you can kind of see where there's a little bit of a paint mishap from the cement and this sliding around. But all in all, everything looks pretty good. Now, some of you may have caught already a mistake that I've made, and that would be in back here on page 9. There's a couple of little posts that go underneath the Orlick and gun tubs on that very first superstructure piece that we put in place. I do have those right here. Here is the C39 parts right there. And here are both of the A48 parts right there. So what I'm going to end up doing here is I'm just going to put them on the ship model while they're in place. It shouldn't be terribly difficult because they're pretty thin, so you should be able to seat them up here at first and then just kind of bend them into place until they get there. But I am going to take care of that off camera. I'll show you what it looks like after we're all done. Okay, so at this point we have got page 12 of our instructions completed with those 3 superstructure sections put down on the hull and the deck. And so our next step is page 13 here, where we've got this small pipe, this hoist or crane, and then the 2 ladders right there. So I'm going to go ahead and put this aside and get started here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. As the pipe that we've got, which is B36, is going to go right there in this little corner. Yes, that is correct. There's a hole right there, and it's almost impossible to see right there with lighting. But we'll do our best here. I'm going to show you the size of the part we're talking about. And that is it right there. So I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit of, to me, extra thin. I got my tweezers set up here. And as always, I've got to have a optivisor because it's just so small and my eyes aren't what they used to be. I'm just going to barely wet the end of this little pipe here. Hopefully we're in. Alright, so I got it fit in there. Now I'm going to twist it around. And that is now what that looks like right there. That's that little pipe in place. Alright, so next up is going to be putting in a little crane and hoist. And if you can see it right here, this slips right down through there, and there's a hole in the deck that the bottom of this fits into. Now it's going to be a little important here to take our hobby knife and just very lightly go over this a little bit, or get in there and kind of ream some of that out a little bit. And just a light touch. We don't want to start peeling back the plastic. If I even let just the weight of this knife sit in there and twist it, it'll be too much. Check it again. Alright, so we are, looks like we're in business here. It'll fit in the hole the way I want it to. So at this point I'm going to go ahead and just wet the end of this piece right here. I'm going to put a little bit right in there. And there it goes. Slips right down into place perfectly. And maybe with a little bit of oils, we can touch it up here so it doesn't look like a mess, but there it is right there in place. So that leaves us with the ladders here, and I can't use to be extra thin here, and where these are going to sit. Alright, let's go ahead and put this into a place where you'll be able to see it. I have to be careful that I'm not going to hit any of that really fragile railing, but these are going to go right there. Kind of like that right there. That's just barely where it touches the deck, this deck down here and the deck of this piece right here. So I'm going to get a little bit of CA on a cup, and we will proceed with getting those fitted. I'll be right back when I'm ready. Alright, now the trick for me is getting some medium CA there, and I take a toothpick and I spread it out a lot. So it's just a very, very thin little puddle, so I'm not getting too much CA on the connecting parts of the ladder. Alright, so now I'm going to go in here and wish me luck. And that went just about as well as I could hope for. See it right there. I'm going to go ahead and do the other side off camera, and we'll get back here and have a look. Alright, so both ladders are in place, and I'm pretty happy with where they're at. They look like they're supposed to be in that spot they're in, and they're straight up and down. I don't have any kind of wonky three-legged stance there with those, so that will complete page 13 of our instructions. So if we move into next page 14, we're going to start to get into some of the railings and some more of these small little pipes right here. And for the most part, just like I've done the other railings, I'm going to really do these railings off camera. It's just so much easier for me, and frankly, probably a lot less boring for you to watch me sit there and fumble around with. Just being able to see the finished product to be a lot nicer and easier for everybody. So I'm going to go ahead and work on getting those done. I'll show you what we look like afterwards. Alright, so page 14 is complete. Both railings on and these tiny little bits, and I will point those out where they are here on the completed project. Or not completed project, but completed step. Go ahead and zoom in here a bit. Alright, so you should be able to see this super thin railing right here, along with one of the pipes right there and another pipe right there. Careful not to knock that railing back over. Looks like this is a spare davit that goes back here. So focusing, there we go. And the railing right back here. So there's just a touch of CA glue shininess at the base of those, but a little bit of dull clear coat in the end should fix things up and make it blend right back in after everything's said and done. So onward to page 15, which is just some railings on the other side. And again, I'm going to complete these off camera here so I can save us all a little headache. Alright, the starboard side railings are on right back here. And right here. This one had a few more bends than the port side, and that's okay. Got them in place, and pretty much all I did was I put some very starter beginning bends into them, and then I got tiny little strips of tape and taped them down to the deck and was able to adjust under the tape into their final location, and then I was able to apply with the glue looper the extra thin CA. So they're in place right now. Again, it's a little shiny there at the very base of it, but again, airbrushing on a little bit of clear, matte clear. That should alleviate any of that shininess and really help tie them into the project in full. So our next step up here is going to be, let me move this aside here real quick. Page 16, where it looks like we are dealing with ship's boats, the davits for that, windlass, 50 cal, or not 50 cal, but 20 millimeter oerlikons that go on either side, and then the 5-inch practice loader right there. So I've pretty much got everything ready to go here. I've got my ship's boats. One, and there's two right there. They were just on a little bit of white tack right there, so I could spray them down with some flat. But they're painted up, they're ready to go. I got the little loops in them. And then go ahead, and here is the 20 millimeter oerlikin all painted up. All that remains to be done with these is to sand off the little lug on the bottom here from the 3D printing process. One of the davits right there got a little bit of oil wash in there to kind of help bring out some of the detail on it. And it's been flat coated as well, so it's ready to go. And I'll dig out that windlass one, and we're ready to put that down in the 5-inch loader. We're ready to put that down as well. And speaking of which, here are these boats. I'm gonna still see if I can kind of rig up some way of using some of these tiny wire parts and being able to capture that on camera. So we'll see what happens. I'll be right back after I get everything prepped. All right, we're back. Some developments here since when I last, we just were 5 seconds ago, and now it's been actually 2 different days here. So one, I decided that this ship's boat with these davits would not fit where it's supposed to right there. It didn't look right, kind of placing it on there how Trumpeter had it on there, and it just didn't look right at all. There's no real good way of attaching it up to these without a little bit of scratch building, which I've done using some really super thin brass wire and a little bit of scratch built plastic blocks. But it would not fit in its stowed position. It just absolutely would not fit properly. So I'm going to put it, since we're going to be at anchor, I'm going to put it in its outboard status, or however you'd say that, getting ready to be lowered down. And that's just the way it's going to be. On the other one, there's not going to be a ship's boat. I'll put the davits again in there in the position to like show that the ship's boat has already gone off and is doing its thing. I figured that was a fair compromise to at least have one of the boats on there, especially while the ship's at anchor. It could be some of the crews going off to look for seashells or have some fun on shore. Amidst all of that, I managed to, in dealing with this frustration here, accidentally dropped my tweezers and broke off the sight to one of the 20mm Oerlikons. A little bit of super glue later and it's back on. But yeah, this whole business with these ship's boats and how Trumpeter has designed that is probably so far the most frustrating aspect of this entire build right now. So I'm glad that that's going to be behind me. And we'll see if we can get this to focus here for you. And as you can see, there are some very thin brass wires coming out of the top. I still have to nip those off. But that is what that's going to be like. And in order to actually wrestle with getting these on, originally, again, plan to show them in the stowed position, I had to jump ahead in the instructions. Page 17 here, where we're showing these Carly floats, one of these going on the inside of this splinter shield or bulwark or whatever you want to call it. But at any rate, I had to put those on first, and thinking that I was going to be able to put these on in the stowed position. So they're already on there, so a little bit of page 17 is already complete. But with that, we will continue with page 16 after I get these davits and everything like that in their final state. So be right back when that's complete. Okay, so off camera, I went ahead and got this boat mounted, and I used some thin CA to make sure it kind of stayed put. That was the plan. It actually looks a little bit of off-plane with the rest of the ship, but that's because the destroyer has got an incline toward the bow. So this right here is parallel with the waterline. But that's what it looks like. And as stated, I was going to make it look like this one right here. The davits had already released the ship's boat, and it was going into shore for sailor fun or what have you. Who knows what those guys do in their off time. So our next steps are going to be, let's have a look at our instructions, page 16. We are going to be putting in step 32, which is the windlass right there. And I've actually already kind of had a look at this right here, and another frustration here with how the kit was designed. If you have a look at this, where the locating holes for this are, they line up right here with a spot where this is impossible to install right there and put into those holes without interfering with the railing right here. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to chop off these locating holes right here, sand it smooth, and just see CA down there in the deck and hope that we don't see the holes in the deck. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of that, and we'll get right back. Okay, so that is now in place, and it's stuff like that that kind of makes you wonder whether or not anyone from Trumpeter has actually tried to put this kit together based off the instructions and the parts supplied, and you know, where they've run into problems. And if that did happen, if they would have put a halt to the instructions or the production saying, wait, you know, hold up, let's revisit this, this is not that good of a design, because I'm not seeing it right there. That right there was just way overlooked. Those railings came, you know, are in the way right there, and frankly, I'm still kind of dubious here on whether or not that was actually really there or designed for anyone to walk through. Pictures of the actual USS Fletcher during this time period do not show anywhere in this area where that would have been up there, but they don't show whether it would have been up there. In fact, they don't even show that right there. It's just hard to get really good images of USS Fletcher in this time period. But still, it's just like, you know, what are you guys thinking if it's supposed to go together this way and you didn't even test it out to make sure it actually goes together this way? All right, so that's enough of my rant. The next one up here is our 5-inch practice loader. And this right here fits right in there. So I'm going to go ahead and get my extra thin ready, and we'll be right back. So I do realize I had this backwards before I stopped the camera and hit play again. Actually, let me go ahead and get that stuff cleared out of there. All right. So just a little bit of extra thin right there. And we'll drop this in place. Alright, there we go. We spun it around so that it kind of matches the anti-slip on there. I'm pressing it down a little bit. Alright, so 5-inch practice loader is now in place. So the last thing that leaves for us on page 16 is 4 20mm Oerlikon cannons on the port and starboard side. So I'm going to go ahead and get those in place. Let me go ahead and get some CA prepared, and we'll be right back. Okay, so I've got some medium CA here, and I'm using a toothpick. The parts I'm using, by the way, are from the Midwest model shop right there, and not from the kit, just because the kit Oerlikons leave a lot to be desired. They're pretty highly detailed, but the only issue is they don't have locating lugs on them like the kit Oerlikon cannons. So you have to sand off the bottoms and the supports and everything like that, and when you've got it all done, you see that CA them into place right there just off of a flat pedestal that you've sanded flat. And there we go. There's one in place. And that really looks good. It really looks like in scale. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other 3, and we'll touch base here after everything's said and done. Okay, so that does it for the 4 20mm Oerlikon cannons. So there's our port side. Here's our starboard side. And they're looking pretty fantastic. Looking the part. So then we're going to move on to, I'm going to put this over here, page 17. And page 17 is, I believe these are, someone's pointed out, kind of like reserve, we'll get to that. Carly floats right there, the racks and everything like that, depth charges, reserve depth charges or provisional depth charges. But Carly floats and the mount for the Carly float, and more Carly floats right there on these pillars on each side. So a lot of CA here. Gonna go ahead and kind of take care of that off camera. Gonna show you everything after it's all done, and we'll touch base after that. All right, well, I know I didn't get everything included here that would go into page 17 on our instructions here. Frankly, I don't believe I showed any of the Carly floats. I didn't record that. I also didn't record getting this little rack with the two little depth charges installed on it either, but they are on there. Again, it's just, the video might seem a little bit disjointed. It's just new camera setup, trying new things here, and the hope is to kind of bring higher definition videos and better quality videos and pictures to you. So I'm going to go ahead and give a quick review here of what everything looks like. You can see right there the Carly floats, ship's boat, another Carly float just below that. There's the depth charge rack right there, along with some of the railing that we can see and the railing back here. And on the starboard side, we go Carly floats, and get the little railing there. These are the davits, and I left the ship's boat off because that was very, very frustrating with how that was set up. Additionally, we can see here these 20mm Oerlikons from the Midwest Model Shop. They are looking spectacular. So all in all, we are done with page 17 of our instructions. So go ahead and talk about what's up next here for us. And that is going to be getting the bridge put together. And it looks like it's a little bit, pretty simple, quick and easy, but with the painting of the camouflage scheme and everything like that, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. Additionally, I'd like to point out here in the time frame I'm modeling USS Fletcher, these right here, these fire directors would not be present. There's already a fire director back here with that 40mm, the twin Bofors, and that would be the fire director for it, so there would be no need for these two there to begin with. And if you check the historical pictures of Fletcher in this time period, those weren't there. So I will not be making holes in that bridge part to put those on, and I will not include those. But everything else should go on, and it should be a pretty fun assembly here to get finished and get put in place. The only thing I'm not looking forward to is getting this railing bent up into shape. But other than that, it's going to be kind of an adventure on trying to figure out how to get the paint scheme and get everything together so it looks good and we don't have a bunch of weird overspray or paint corrections to make. So in the meantime, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns or suggestions on what I can do to improve on either the videos or my modeling, please leave that feedback for me below in the comments section. And until then, stay safe, happy modeling.